They thought we were just another upstart species, emotional, primitive, unpredictable. So the Galactic Council flexed. They came to intimidate us, to take what was ours. What they didn't know is that humans were never prey. We've just been pretending. And when predators wake up, galaxies burn. Because Earth doesn't ask for permission. We leave claw marks instead. They called the meeting chamber a place of diplomacy, but it reeked of veiled threats and practiced arrogance. Ambassador Roland Kane sat alone at the obsidian half-moon table, surrounded by 17 species who ruled the Galactic Council. Eyes, some compound, some glowing, some blinking sideways, studied him as if he were a curiosity rather than a colleague. He didn't blink. Let them stare. That's what predators do when sizing up their prey. Counselor Zurak, the Lahari delegate with a spine like a coiled whip and a tongue that flicked between each word, leaned forward with mock sympathy. Ambassador Kane, I understand this may be difficult for your kind to accept. You've made great strides, truly. But Delta 7 is a restricted system. Your claim is invalid, and the Council has voted unanimously to repossess the colony. Roland's lips didn't move. He let silence do the heavy lifting. Around him, murmurs passed like currents beneath still water. The Council expected outrage or protest, anything to confirm the narrative that humans were emotional, impulsive, reactionary. They wanted another soundbite for their archives. Humans lash out when denied. Instead, Roland slowly set a small cube on the table. The surface shimmered and projected a holographic readout, deep drill scans of Delta 7's core, along with documented timestamps showing first claim rights. It was legally airtight. Zurak scoffed. Timestamps mean nothing when sovereignty is under review. Surely you understand the wisdom of the majority. I understand theft when I see it, Roland said without raising his voice. The room stilled. We are offering to purchase extraction rights, at a generous rate, added Counselor Ishel, the Krellian diplomat whose species hadn't fought a war in 1,000 years and believed every conflict could be solved with credit transfers and apologies. We're not interested in payment, Roland said. We're interested in what's ours. Counselor Veru, from the Adrexian Hierophant Order, folded her feathered arms. If Earth refuses, you leave us no choice. Enforcement actions will be taken. Non-compliance with Council directives has consequences. You always say that like it's news to us. He could feel the air shift, nervous glances exchanged in whispers not quite whispered. Earth had played docile for decades, smiling at every condescending offer of mentorship, nodding at each politely worded threat. The Council saw humanity as a convenient side project, an underdeveloped world to integrate slowly. Let them join the grown-ups, after enough testing. What they never understood was that humans hadn't been sleeping. They'd been listening. Is this your final position? Roland asked. Zurak coiled tighter, sensing victory. Yes. Roland stood. Then here's ours. The cube on the table blinked red. At that precise moment, across the galaxy, orbital surveillance drones around Delta 7 powered up, cloaking shields disengaged. Over a dozen Council ships stationed nearby suddenly dropped from the grid. Communications went dark. For 12 seconds silence reigned, until static burst into the Council chamber's speakers, followed by a single human voice. Delta 7 secured. No survivors. Gasps spread like sparks on dry leaves. Ishel stood, nearly panicked. What have you done? What we always do, Roland replied. Prepared. Zurak snarled. This is an act of war. Only if you think you can win it. You dare threaten. I don't need to threaten. You brought ships. We brought predators. Zurak slammed his hand against the table. Earth will be isolated. All trade embargoed. Your colonies will starve, your tech will rot, your people will crawl back begging. Roland looked directly into the feed, his tone now razor-sharp. You think cutting us off is a punishment? You think isolation frightens a species that spent most of its history fighting itself? You've confused cooperation with dependence. A pause. Measured. Waited. Then he continued. You've built this council on comfort. Consensus. Fragile power structures pretending to be strength. Humans come from a place where the environment tried to kill us every day. Where creatures stronger, faster, and deadlier than us ruled the food chain. We didn't rise by voting our way to safety. The lights in the chamber flickered as every terminal began displaying coded transmissions, data packets marked as coming from neutral systems. Council text scrambled, but it was too late. Files opened themselves. One by one, confidential communications, bribes, blackmail, political manipulation, began scrolling across every screen. "What is this?" Counselor Varys shouted. "Receipts," Roland said. The chamber descended into chaos. Delegates argued among themselves. Some stormed out. Others demanded answers, shouting at Roland like that would undo what had already begun. Humanity had waited. It had watched. And when the moment came, it didn't lash out. It unleashed. "Delta 7 is ours," Roland said flatly. "And now so is the narrative." He turned to leave, but paused. The room was half empty. The rest frozen in stunned silence. He looked over his shoulder one last time. "We didn't want this. But we're very good at it." And then, without pomp or escort, he walked out. Outside, the diplomatic corridors of the Spire, the Galactic Council's neutral capital, were already rippling with rumors. Civilizations whispered of what had happened in that chamber. What Earth had done. But Roland didn't stop walking. He didn't need to look back. Predators don't confirm the kill. They just wait for the next hunt. The attack on Delta 7 was swift, surgical, and silent. In 12 minutes, an entire council fleet ceased to exist. No grand explosions, no flashy dogfights. Just silence. Because that's how predators kill, quietly, without warning, and with no need for spectacle. By the time the council realized what had happened, Earth's colony had already activated full lockdown. The Voidite extraction continued uninterrupted. Back on Earth, Commander Imani Voss stood at the center of strategic control, watching the after-action feed stream in from orbit. The room was dark except for pulsing light from holoscreens, displaying grid maps riddled with crossed-out Council ships. She tapped once on her interface. The message was transmitted to every Apex protocol node across Solnet. "Phase 1 complete. Ready for counterstrike." At the same moment, Councillor Zurak, hissing, humiliated, and furious, addressed the emergency council session in the Spire. "This is not an act of defense. This is unprovoked aggression. Earth must be sanctioned, crushed, neutralized before this infection spreads." Sanction, crush, neutralize. Words that sounded impressive in chambers filled with diplomats, but meant little to a species that learned to adapt by consuming its enemies. Earth didn't fear isolation. It weaponized it. While Zurak ranted, Roland Kane sat silently, reviewing intercepted council communications. The logs revealed a disturbing truth. The council had planned to seize not just Delta 7, but the entire human-controlled Outer Rim. There were no peaceful intentions. The vote had been unanimous before humans even responded. When the truth hit the public feeds, council citizens erupted. Protests flared on 5 core worlds. Civil unrest boiled in systems that once mocked Earth for being too volatile. Now those same systems envied humanity's clarity, its resolve. There was no confusion about Earth's position. You attack us, we end you. On Cadric 4, the Council launched a retaliatory strike, expecting resistance. What they got was a massacre. The assault team landed near the outpost, armed to the teeth, confident in numbers and tech. But the terrain had been altered. The soil had been seeded with polymorphic sand mines, adaptive devices that detected non-human biological signatures and detonated beneath the skin. Troops vanished into red mist before they ever reached the walls. The survivors fell back, only to discover the path they retreated along had been turned into a trap maze. Modular walls shifted every few seconds, turning their escape into a puzzle they couldn't solve fast enough. Then came the wolves. 7-foot bipedal exosuits, sleek and matte black, dropped from cloaked orbiters and landed with seismic force. Their movements weren't robotic, they were feral. Each unit was piloted by an elite operator linked via neural thread, allowing for instinct-level control. They didn't fire weapons. They hunted. The Council soldiers tried to regroup, but the wolves moved like predators in the night, ripping through formations, tearing into armor like it was tissue. The final transmission from the ground team was a single panicked sentence. "They're not soldiers, they're monsters." That clip circulated in the Council's internal feed before it was purged. But not before 22 species saw it. At the Spire, Ishil called an emergency vote to deploy orbital pacifiers, giant non-lethal suppression arrays designed to disable communication, disrupt shields, and drain power sources across planetary surfaces. They'd never been used on a Council member world before. The vote failed. Several delegates abstained. A few outright opposed it. No one wanted to be the next target. Roland Kane walked into the chamber 2 minutes after the failed motion and placed a new device on the table. This time, it wasn't a hologram. It was a living feed. The camera panned across the interior of the Council's Forward Intelligence Command on Zenth Prime. Human forces stood inside. No casualties. No alarms. Just a series of unconscious guards stacked neatly in corners and terminals already rerouted to Solnet. "You weren't just outgunned," Roland said softly. "You were outthought." Zurak refused to look at the feed. "Terrorism." Roland nodded. "Call it that if it helps you sleep. But if humans wanted terror, Zenth would be ash. Instead, we left a message." The feed zoomed to a wall. A simple phrase painted in red, in 17 languages. "Next time, we don't knock." Counselor Veras slammed her hand down. "You're destabilizing the galaxy." "No," Roland said. "We're stabilizing it by reminding everyone what consequence looks like." Across the galaxy, smaller civilizations started declaring neutrality or expressing support for Earth's claim. The Council, once seen as untouchable, now looked brittle. Scared. Because predators don't bluff. They don't posture. They act. Imani Voss received new orders an hour later. Stand down, maintain readiness, initiate Phase 2 of Apex Protocol, disruption through pressure. She didn't launch missiles. She launched stories. Dozens of reports, all true, highlighting Council corruption, civil abuses, resource theft, genocide covered by procedural language. Every dirty secret Earth had collected during its years of smiling through negotiations. Released not all at once, but in a slow, deliberate stream. Drip by drip, the galaxy learned what Earth had learned long ago, that peace without strength is surrender in disguise. Council channels lit up with emergency strategy debates. Fleet captains refused to obey orders. Civil wars flared on distant worlds. And Earth? Earth didn't invade. Didn't send armies to occupy. It just watched. Apex predators don't dominate by being loud. They dominate by letting others realize, too late, that they've already lost. The Council believed the tide would turn. They assumed Earth's campaign was unsustainable, a flash of fury soon to burn out under the weight of galactic opposition. But that illusion died the moment the Council's central intelligence nexus went offline. It didn't crash, it disappeared. No warning. No trace. The collective eyes of the most powerful civilizations went dark in a single heartbeat. That was when fear replaced arrogance. Inside Earth's covert command, codenamed Iron Veil, Imani Voss leaned over the terminal. Her team didn't celebrate. They calibrated the next strike. The virus that took out the Nexus had no signature, no code trace, no data stream. Because it wasn't transmitted by signal. It was embedded in thought, woven into the subquantum neural exchanges the Council's own advisors had imported during past cultural collaborations. Years ago, Earth seeded the infection through art, language, even shared meditation protocols. Now it bloomed. Back at the Spire, the Council fractured in real time. Half the delegates refused to sit. Accusations flew. Some claimed betrayal from within. Others demanded retribution. None could agree on who to blame. Roland Kane didn't speak. He didn't have to. He watched them argue, observed the panic flood in behind the polished rhetoric. The illusion of control had cracked. Counselor Vera finally turned to him. What do you want? Roland tilted his head. Want? You think this is about desire? You invaded our territory. You silenced our diplomacy. You tried to strip our sovereignty behind bureaucratic walls. What I want is irrelevant. This is about balance. Zurak snarled. You destabilized the core of interstellar governance. Because it was already unstable, Roland answered. We just showed everyone where the cracks were. Vera's voice lost its composure. Do you intend to dismantle the council? No. We intend to replace it. Silence followed, broken only by the faint hum of compromised systems restarting under Earth's new oversight. Not a takeover, an adoption. In the field, the next stage unfolded. Human operatives weren't soldiers now. They were advisors. Infiltrators. Whispers in the ears of dissatisfied worlds. They provided food drops, clean water tech, medical nanites to neglected fringe colonies. No flags. No speeches. Just solutions. Meanwhile, leaked documents revealed how the Council had funneled resources away from those same colonies for centuries. Support for Earth surged, not through conquest but through contrast. A predator doesn't need to roar when the forest already echoes with the memory of its claws. Imani watched the numbers climb. 63 systems declaring neutrality. 37 requesting negotiations with Earth directly, bypassing Council protocols entirely. 17 military defections. And then came the breach that no one predicted. One of the Council's own, High Executor Farron of the Jandari Corps, crossed into Earth space under no banner, requesting asylum. She brought not just herself, but 10 terabytes of deep intelligence. Black site projects. Hidden fleets. War contingency plans. She said nothing upon arrival, only handed over a single sealed device labeled Project Halogate. When decrypted, it revealed the Council's ultimate fallback, a fleet hidden in deep time-fold orbit, carrying weapons forbidden by ancient treaties. Weapons designed not to disable or conquer, but erase. They had planned for Earth's resistance. They had planned to unmake it. Roland absorbed the revelation without reaction. Only one question followed. Is it active? Farron's voice cracked when she answered. It's awake. Imani rerouted every satellite, every listening probe, every AI node Earth possessed. The Halogate fleet had remained untouched for millennia, parked in a relativistic shell just beyond dark space drift. But now signals spiked. It had received its directive. And it was moving. Earth's response wasn't panic. It was a switch. Project Severance had been a theory, a contingency never meant to be used. A last resort? It required unanimous activation from Earth's Tri-Command Authority. All 3 keys turned within 10 minutes. No one hesitated. Severance was not a weapon. It was a field generator capable of collapsing space-time in a fixed vector. Not an explosion, not even a black hole. It would erase the concept of movement within a radius. Anything inside froze. Not in time, but in function. Imani uploaded the targeting lattice. Roland authorized the launch. The moment Severance deployed, the Halogate fleet fell silent. The ships didn't explode. They didn't drift. They simply stopped existing as kinetic objects. 1,000 warships, hovering like museum pieces, trapped in a reality that no longer acknowledged velocity. The Council screamed war crime. Earth answered with stillness. No bombs, no fire, no body count. Just irreversible stasis. And in that moment, the galaxy understood what true restraint looked like. Earth could have annihilated the fleet. They chose not to. They chose message over massacre. Roland addressed the galaxy the next day. Not from the spire. From orbit above Delta 7, as voidite harvesters glowed behind him. Humanity was labeled primitive for embracing chaos. Aggressive for refusing submission. Dangerous for remembering that survival is earned, not given. But you mistook principle for weakness. You mistook our silence for absence. You mistook our patience for peace. He paused, letting the words settle. We don't want your throne. We want the jungle back. One where law isn't dictated by power, but by cost. So ask yourselves, each of you, if Earth was your prey, why are you the ones bleeding? No applause followed. Just the galaxy, listening to the sound of its own fear. The first time the galaxy realized humanity had evolved beyond its understanding wasn't when Earth won the war. It was when Earth stopped needing one. No fleets moved. No weapons fired. Yet across the stars, power began to tilt, almost imperceptibly at first. Council infrastructure flickered. Distribution hubs rerouted themselves. Authority eroded not by conquest, but corrosion. Roland Kane's final broadcast had echoed through every major system, but it wasn't the words that did the damage, it was the silence that followed. No rebuttal. No condemnation. Just watching. Waiting. In the shadows of that void, something else stirred. Voidite had always been more than a mineral. Earth's science corps had long suspected its alien origin. What they hadn't expected was for it to respond to them. It wasn't just sentient. It was selective. The core fragment extracted from Delta 7 didn't resist integration. It sought it. The more Earth's engineers tested it, the more it adapted. Neural resonance arrays showed spike patterns that mimicked human emotional memory. It didn't bond through logic. It bonded through instinct. Imani Voss was the first to connect. The initial sync was brief, 4 seconds, but when she emerged from the interface pod, she wasn't the same. Her thoughts came faster. Her awareness stretched into simulations before the data even loaded. The Voidite didn't expand her mind. It refined it. Within weeks, strategic projections stopped using standard AI. They used her. She didn't just predict enemy movements. She saw intentions. Not just tactics, behavior. The Voidite, referred to now only as Apex, wasn't a tool. It was a mirror. And in humanity it had found a reflection it understood. Species that survived by dominating their environment. Entities that made strength out of limitation. Creatures that endured. When the Council learned Earth had integrated Apex, they tried to respond. Not with weapons, those were no longer effective, but with fear. Proclamations of existential threat. Warnings to all systems. Isolation demands. It backfired. Because when lesser civilizations looked at Earth, they didn't see a tyrant. They saw clarity. Council alliances were transactional. Earth's was evolutionary. Those who joined Earth didn't become subjects. They became shields. Not because humans were noble, but because they made a simple offer no other power ever had. Fight beside us, and no one will ever conquer you again. That's how the Valkyrie defected. That's how the Queni Hive offered 3 queens to serve in Earth's diplomatic fleet. That's how even the Kratek, a species that once called humanity a footnote species, offered full genetic archives in exchange for protection. But not everyone surrendered to fear. The remnants of the Council's intelligence branch made one final move. A black site division known only as Omen activated a failsafe seeded long ago, before Earth had ever been granted formal galactic entry. Project Syrinx. Biological logic bomb. Designed not to kill, but to undo cognition. Once deployed, it would slip through language itself, embedding meaning corruption at a neurological level. Understanding would fracture. Communication would degrade. They thought they could detonate Earth's unity. Not with explosions, but with confusion. They failed before it started. Because Apex wasn't just bonded to human strategy. It had spread into Earth's linguistic protocols. It had rewritten patterns, stored context, corrected syntactic instability before it reached the cortex. Humans didn't just absorb the attack. They vaccinated the rest of the galaxy against it. The infected sectors recovered within hours. Earth's signal washed across space like a neuro bomb, rebooting comprehension frameworks. Entire populations snapped out of fog, realizing who had saved them. The Council's final weapon had proven Earth's ultimate value. And just like that, fear stopped being Earth's shadow. It became its banner. Roland's next address wasn't broadcast. It was whispered. Passed hand to hand, system to system. Untraceable, undeniable. He didn't speak of dominance. He spoke of instinct. Of survival. He didn't offer an empire. He offered teeth. Predators aren't born. They're made. And we were forged in fire your stars never knew. We don't ask for obedience. We ask for your eyes wide open, and your backs held straight. Stand behind us, and we make you unbreakable. Stand against us, and we teach your children the meaning of regret. The council collapsed not in defeat, but in irrelevance. By the end of the next cycle, Earth held no titles, but dictated trade flow across 5 sectors. It signed no treaties, but redrew borders. It didn't occupy worlds, it invited them. Because Apex didn't seek to destroy. It sought purpose. And humanity, for all its chaos, had something no other species had ever offered it: alignment. Not of peace, but of clarity. When Apex pulsed across the relay spine of the galactic core and lit up 6 constellations with a new signal signature, no one fired. No one protested. They simply watched and understood. The predators weren't coming. They were already here. The last official act of the Galactic Council was not a speech, not a vote, not even a surrender. It was a silence. A long, tense, unbroken pause during which every delegate sat frozen, watching their own insignificance reflected back at them through the raw certainty of extinction. By then, Earth had stopped asking for acknowledgement. Apex had stopped broadcasting. There was no need for words when dominance had already been accepted. Roland Kane stood alone in what used to be the primary chamber of interstellar governance. There were no guards. No applause. Just echoes of decisions made too late by species who thought time obeyed their hierarchy. He wasn't there to speak. He was there to end it cleanly. The structure remains, he said quietly. But the authority no longer lives here. Counselor Veru, still draped in what was once considered ceremonial authority, tried one last argument. If Earth absorbs this much control without regulation, the balance will tip again. One tyranny exchanged for another. Roland turned toward her, not with anger, but pity. You think control is what we wanted. You never understood us. You never even tried. We understand now, she said, but it came out thin. No. You fear now. That's not the same thing. He placed a small cube on the table and walked away. It began playing moments later, footage not of war, but of rebuilding. Colonies once forgotten by the Council receiving shipments from Earth. Engineers working alongside alien volunteers. Technology shared, not sold. Not loaned. Given. The Council had led through superiority. Earth led through proof. Imani Voss had already established a new interface station in the Delta 7 system. Apex now operated on a decentralized chain, rooted in collaborative nodes managed by allied species. Information no longer funneled through elite networks. It radiated outward: open-source defense protocols, decentralized civic governance models, automated neutral arbitration systems. Earth hadn't seized control. It erased the need for old control altogether. And yet, beneath it all, the teeth remained. Always just beneath the skin. Predators don't forget how to kill. They choose not to. It was in the way Roland answered the last challenge. The Valkyrie merchant lords sent a veiled threat cloaked in trade negotiations, warning that Earth's resource prioritization was bordering on monopolistic behavior. They expected negotiation. Instead, Roland had the supply grid shut down in exactly 32 systems. Not a word spoken. Not a threat issued. Just an immediate, calculated freeze of all cargo routes relevant to Valkyrie commerce. 7 minutes of economic panic followed before the transmission came through, not from Roland, but from Imani. We're not punishing you, she said. We're showing you what fragility feels like. By the 8th minute, the Valkyrie reversed their position. Publicly. Apologetically. Trade resumed 10 seconds later. No one else challenged Earth again. Because nothing is more terrifying than a predator that chooses not to eat. The galaxy adapted. It had no other choice. Systems realigned, not by decree but gravity. Earth became the center of something it never sought to rule, a new order built on deterrence, merit, and brutal transparency. Every civilization now understood Earth didn't want to govern them. It wanted no one to govern humanity. Freedom, after all, was the one thing humans would always kill for. Children on distant moons began learning Terran history in their schools. Not as propaganda, as survival training. Stories of human persistence became cautionary tales for fledgling diplomats. Never corner a species that learned evolution by bleeding. Never bluff the player who's already holding a knife. But with influence came an unintended outcome. Some asked to be taught. And that changed everything. Small species, long ignored, began requesting mentorship programs. Not military, not economic, psychological. They wanted to understand how humans thought, why they adapted when others collapsed, how they converted trauma into fuel. Earth didn't give them soldiers. It gave them sociologists, educators, psychotherapists. Because the final act of an apex predator is not consumption. It's conversion. Predators become legends only when they stop killing and start shaping the ecosystem around them. A century after the fall of the Council, a new chamber was built, not a replica of the Spire, but an open-air orbital ring above Delta 7. No seats of power. No declarations. Just one rule: speak honestly, or don't speak at all. It worked. Because every species remembered what silence could cost. And they remembered who enforced it. Earth never crowned itself a ruler. Never declared an empire. But when a system needed arbitration, when a conflict threatened collapse, when a shadow loomed too large to face, everyone looked to the same direction. Because they hadn't forgotten. No one had. What Earth had done wasn't domination. It was reminding the galaxy that peace is not the absence of violence. It is the result of standing behind something that no one dares to attack. The story spread, far beyond Earth's influence. A child on the edge of the void once asked their mother if the humans were real. She didn't answer at first. Then she whispered, "They are. And if you ever see one smile, don't run." "Why not?" "Because it's already too late."